The vast Montana sky stretched endlessly above Rolling Hills Ranch, where broken dreams lay scattered like tumbleweeds across the dusty plains. In a small town where everyone knew everyone's business, some stories remained buried deeper than the prairie grass roots. This is the tale of Sarah Mitchell, a woman the whole town believed had vanished without a trace 3 years ago, and the mysterious cowboy whose arrival would uncover the truth that changed everything. Copper Creek, Montana, population 847, was the kind of place where generations lived and died within a 20-mile radius, where the local diner served the same menu for 30 years, where high school football games were the social event of the week, and where secrets had a way of festering in the mountain air until they poisoned everything they touched. Before we begin this incredible journey, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Are you joining us from the wide-open spaces of Texas, the busy streets of New York, or somewhere else entirely? We love connecting with our viewers from around the world. This story will take you through the rugged beauty of Montana and into the heart of a mystery that will keep you guessing until the very end. Now, let's dive into Sarah's story. The Ghost of Rolling Hills. The morning sun painted the Montana landscape in shades of gold as Jake Thompson guided his black stallion down the dusty main street of Copper Creek. The horse, a magnificent Frisian named Thunder, had been his companion through 2 tours in Afghanistan and countless lonely nights. Together, they made an imposing sight, the battle-hardened soldier and his warhorse returning to face ghosts they'd both tried to leave behind. The town hadn't changed much in 15 years. Same weathered storefronts with their faded paint, same pickup trucks parked outside Murphy's general store, same curious stares from locals who remembered him as the troublemaker who'd disappeared after high school graduation. The American flags still hung from every lamppost, though they were newer now, replaced after too many harsh winters. But Jake wasn't the same man who'd left. The military had carved away his reckless youth, replacing it with discipline and scars both visible and hidden. The laugh lines around his eyes had been replaced by crow's feet, earned from squinting through desert sand and mountain snow. His hands, once smooth and quick to ball into fists, now bore calluses from handling weapons and wounded comrades. He'd returned to settle his late grandfather's estate, the old Thompson Ranch that bordered the infamous Rolling Hills property. Grandpa Joe had been the only one who'd believed in Jake's potential, the only one who'd understood why a restless 18-year-old needed to see the world beyond Montana's borders. "Well, I'll be damned," came a gravelly voice from the store porch. "Jake Thompson, as I live and breathe." Jake dismounted and tipped his Stetson to Murphy, the store owner whose family had run the establishment since 1952. Murphy looked older now, his beard completely white, his back bent from decades of lifting feed sacks and listening to the town's troubles. "Morning, Murphy. Town looks the same." "Mostly." Murphy's expression darkened as he glanced around nervously. "Though we've had our troubles. You hear about the Mitchell girl?" Jake's jaw tightened involuntarily. Sarah Mitchell. Even after all these years, her name could still make his heart skip. The girl with honey-colored hair that caught sunlight like spun gold, summer sky eyes that could see right through his teenage bravado to the scared kid beneath. The girl who'd chosen the safety of Tom Wheeler's family money over the uncertainty of Jake's dreams. He remembered their last conversation, the night before he'd left for basic training. They'd met at their secret place by Miller's Creek, where they'd carved their initials into an old cottonwood tree. Sarah had been crying, torn between her heart and her head. "I can't wait for maybes, Jake," she'd whispered. "Tom's offering me a life I can count on." "And I'm offering you adventure," Jake had replied, young and foolish enough to believe love could conquer practical concerns. "I'm offering you the whole world." "But what if the world doesn't want us?" she'd asked. Now, 15 years later, Jake understood what she'd meant. The world was harsh and unforgiving, full of dangers and friends who didn't come home. Maybe Sarah had been the smart one after all. "I heard she went missing," Jake replied carefully, pushing away the memories. Murphy shook his head, his weathered face creased with worry. 3 years ago, middle of the night, just vanished like smoke. Left her car at Miller's Bridge, purse and all. Sheriff ruled it suicide, but he glanced around nervously. Some of us ain't so sure. Jake felt ice form in his veins. Sarah, gone? The woman who'd been afraid of swimming in the creek because she couldn't see the bottom. The idea of her taking her own life seemed impossible. She'd been the girl who rescued injured birds and cried at sad movies, who saw potential in broken things. Her husband, Tom Wheeler, he remarried real quick, Murphy continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. To that fancy lawyer from Billings. Inherited everything. The ranch, the land, Sarah's trust fund. Now he's trying to buy up half the county, and folks are getting nervous about his methods. Jake's hands unconsciously clenched. Tom Wheeler, the golden boy quarterback, who'd always gotten everything he wanted, including Sarah. Tom had been born into money and privilege, never having to fight for anything. While Jake had been dodging bullets in foreign deserts, Tom had been playing house with the woman Jake had never stopped loving. A black SUV with tinted windows approached from the Wheeler Ranch, its engine purring with expensive power. It slowed as it passed Jake's stallion, and the window rolled down just enough for Jake to catch a glimpse of steel-grey eyes watching him with predatory intensity. That'd be Mrs. Victoria Wheeler, Murphy said with undisguised distaste. Tom's new wife, ice-cold woman, that one, runs the whole operation now. Tom barely leaves the house anymore. Some say he's drinking heavy, others say he's just broken up about Sarah. But Victoria, she's got plans for this county. Jake absorbed this information like a soldier processing intelligence. Something felt fundamentally wrong, like a puzzle with pieces forced into place. Sarah wasn't the type to give up on life, and Tom Wheeler becoming a reclusive alcoholic didn't match the ambitious young man Jake remembered. Tell me about that night, Jake said. The night Sarah disappeared. Murphy looked around, then gestured for Jake to follow him inside the store. Among the shelves lined with canned goods and feed supplies, he spoke in hushed tones. It was October 15th, 3 years ago. Sarah had been acting strange for weeks, nervous, jumpy, looking over her shoulder. My wife Ellen works at the bank, and she said Sarah had been asking questions about some of Tom's business accounts. Then, that night, around midnight, someone saw her car parked at Miller's Bridge with the engine running and the driver's door open. Jake's military training kicked in, analyzing the story. Did anyone search the water? Of course they did. Divers went down 3 times, never found a body, which Sheriff Collins said was normal given the current. But Jake, Murphy leaned closer. Ellen was working late at the bank that night, and she swears she saw Sarah's car driving toward the mountains around 2 a.m., hours after it was supposedly found abandoned. The pieces weren't fitting together. As Jake rode toward his grandfather's property, the landscape grew more familiar, but somehow alien. The Wheeler Ranch, once the pride of the valley, now looked like something from a different world. High-tech security cameras were mounted on posts along the perimeter, and the pastoral charm had been replaced by surveillance and control. The Wheeler Ranch house, once painted cheerful yellow with white trim, now appeared gray and lifeless. Black SUVs were parked in the circular driveway, and men in dark clothing moved with the purposeful stride of professional security rather than ranch hands. 2 of these men emerged from a guard shack at the main gate. They weren't local ranch workers. Their bearing, their equipment, their cold eyes all screamed private military contractors. "This is private property," one called out, his hand resting on what Jake identified as a concealed Glock. "State your business." "Jake Thompson," he replied, letting steel enter his voice. "I'm here to see Tom Wheeler. We're old friends from high school." After a radio conversation, the electronic gate swung open. "Follow the main drive. Don't deviate. You're being monitored." The front door opened before Jake could knock, revealing a tall, elegant woman with platinum blonde hair pulled back severely. Victoria Wheeler was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, sharp, cold, and undeniably dangerous. She wore a tailored business suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice cultured with just a hint of an accent. "I'm Victoria Wheeler. My husband is indisposed. Perhaps I can help you?" Jake dismounted and removed his hat, playing the polite cowboy while his eyes catalogued details. Security cameras in the eaves, reinforced door frames, bulletproof windows. This wasn't a ranch house, it was a fortress. "I was hoping to pay my respects regarding Sarah," Jake replied carefully. "She and I were close once." Victoria's smile became predatory. "How thoughtful. I'm afraid Tom finds discussions about his late wife quite distressing. He's taken her loss very hard." "I'm sure it was difficult for everyone. Sarah was well loved in this community." "Indeed she was." Victoria stepped closer, and Jake caught expensive perfume mixed with something else. Fear, maybe, or excitement. "I understand you've inherited property adjacent to ours. We'd be interested in making you a generous offer. It would save you the trouble of maintaining such a remote and potentially dangerous location." The implicit threat hung in the air. Jake smiled, letting some of his Delta Force training show. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm planning to stay. This land has been in my family for 4 generations. Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold beneath. "That would be quite unfortunate. The isolation can be treacherous. Accidents happen so easily. Equipment failures, wild animals, unexpected storms. Even experienced outdoorsmen sometimes simply disappear." The threat was no longer implicit. Jake touched his hat brim and smiled. "Well, ma'am, I reckon I'll take my chances. After all, I've survived worse than Montana weather." As Jake rode away, his mind churned with possibilities. Victoria's behavior, the military-grade security, Tom's convenient absence, it all pointed to something much larger than a simple suicide or murder motivated by greed. The sun was setting as Jake reached his grandfather's ranch. The main house needed work, but the bones were solid. In the old barn, Jake made a discovery that stopped him cold. Hidden behind stacked hay bales, he found evidence of recent habitation: a sleeping bag, canned goods, women's clothing and toiletries. Tucked beneath the makeshift bedding was something that made his blood run cold. A small silver locket he remembered giving to Sarah Mitchell on her 16th birthday. He'd saved for months to buy it, working odd jobs after school. Inside was a photo of them together at the county fair, young and laughing. Sarah was alive. Somehow, despite what the whole town believed, Sarah Mitchell was alive and had been hiding on his family's property. As if summoned by his thoughts, Jake heard the soft nicker of a horse outside. A lone rider approached through the twilight, moving with careful stealth. Even in the dim light, Jake would have recognized that graceful seat anywhere. Sarah Mitchell was coming home. Shadows and secrets. The figure on horseback paused at the edge of Jake's property, clearly debating whether to approach. In the moonlight, Jake could see her more clearly now. Thinner than she'd been 3 years ago, her golden hair now cut short and hidden beneath a worn baseball cap. Jake stepped out of the shadows, hands visible and empty. "Sarah," he called softly. "It's me, it's Jake." The horse shied, but Sarah controlled it expertly. For a long moment they stared at each other, the weight of 3 years and 1,000 unanswered questions hanging between them. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "It's not safe." "Neither should you, apparently," Jake replied. "The whole town thinks you're dead." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Sometimes I think I am." She glanced nervously toward the Wheeler Ranch. "You need to leave, Jake. Tonight, before they know you've seen me." "I'm not going anywhere," Jake said firmly. "Not until you tell me what's happening." Sarah moved closer. "Like we used to." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Jake, I made so many mistakes. I chose security over love, and now what?" Jake reached her horse. "Sarah, what happened that night?" Sarah looked toward the Wheeler Ranch, where lights blazed despite the late hour. "I found something I wasn't supposed to find. Documents, transactions, things that proved what Tom and Victoria were really doing." "What kind of things?" "Money laundering," Sarah said barely above a whisper. "The ranch is a front. All those cattle sales, the land acquisitions, it's all fake. They're cleaning money for dangerous people, millions of dollars." Jake felt pieces clicking into place. "That's why the security, why they want to buy surrounding land." Sarah nodded. I overheard a phone call between Tom and Victoria. They were planning to stage my death, make it look like suicide, so Tom could inherit my trust fund and expand the operation. But I ran before they could. Her voice broke, and Jake saw the full horror. They were going to kill you. The night I disappeared, I was supposed to die in a car accident. Victoria had sabotaged my brakes, but I knew something was wrong, so I abandoned the car and ran. Sarah's hands shook. I've been hiding ever since, trying to find evidence. A sound made them both freeze, the distant hum of ATVs growing closer. Sarah's horse danced nervously. "They're coming," she whispered. "They must have motion detectors." Jake grabbed her horse's bridle. "Follow me." They rode hard through the darkness, following deer trails Sarah knew intimately. After an hour, Sarah led them to an abandoned homestead deep in the national forest. Inside the weathered cabin, Sarah revealed a laptop hidden beneath loose floorboards. "This is everything I've collected. Financial records, shipping manifests, photographs. Enough to put them away for life if I could get it to the right people." Jake studied the screen, his expression growing grimmer. "Sarah, this isn't just money laundering. Look at these shipping records. They're moving something that requires refrigerated transport and tight security." Sarah pulled up another file. "I think it's drugs, but I haven't been able to confirm." Jake's blood ran cold as he recognized coded language. "This isn't drugs, Sarah. This is human trafficking." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah stared at the screen, the full horror finally becoming clear. "The women," she whispered. "I've seen women being brought to the ranch late at night. I thought they were workers, but they looked scared." Jake's jaw clenched with fury. "We're not talking about prison time anymore. If they're trafficking people, they'll kill anyone who threatens them." Sarah collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed. "Jake, how many people have suffered because I was too scared to come forward?" "Hey," Jake knelt beside her, taking her hands. "You've been gathering evidence, staying alive to fight another day. That takes incredible courage. What do we do now?" Jake was quiet, formulating a plan. "We need someone we can trust completely. My former commanding officer is now with the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force, Colonel Martinez. She can't be bought and won't back down." Sarah felt the first flutter of hope in 3 years. "You think she'll help?" "I know she will," Jake said with conviction. "But first, we need more evidence, something that proves the trafficking operation. That means getting close to the ranch again. It's too dangerous." "Not for me," Jake replied, his special forces training evident. "I know how to get in and out undetected. But I'll need your help. You know their routines, their security patterns." As they planned their reconnaissance mission, Sarah felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope. For 3 years she'd been running, hiding, merely surviving. Now she had an ally, Jake Thompson, the man who'd once promised to fight dragons for her. The game of cat and mouse that had defined Sarah's existence was about to become a battle for justice and the lives of countless innocent victims. Into the lion's den. The pre-dawn darkness provided perfect cover as Jake moved through the forest surrounding the Wheeler Ranch. He'd spent the previous day studying the property, mapping security positions and timing guard rotations. Sarah waited at their rendezvous point, monitoring radio frequencies, knowing Jake was risking his life based on information she'd provided. Jake approached from the north, where a creek provided concealment almost to the ranch boundary. The new storage facility was situated away from the main house, surrounded by its own perimeter of guards and sensors. As Jake crept closer, he began to hear sounds that made his blood run cold. Muffled voices speaking in Spanish and Eastern European languages, and underneath it all, the sound of women crying. The storage facility wasn't storing goods. It was housing people. Jake documented everything as he moved. The building looked like a standard agricultural barn, but the windows were barred, and the ventilation system was far too sophisticated for storing grain. Through gaps in the building's siding, Jake caught glimpses of the interior. What he saw made his stomach turn. Women and young girls, dozens of them, huddled in makeshift dormitories. They looked malnourished, terrified, and defeated. As he circled the building, Jake overheard a conversation between guards. "Boss lady says we're moving the whole operation next week," one guard said. "Too much heat with the Thompson guy showing up." "Where to?" asked the second guard. "New facility in Wyoming. She's been planning this for months." Jake's mind raced. If they were moving the operation, this might be their only chance. A hand grabbed his shoulder, and Jake spun around ready to fight. But instead of a guard, he found Tom Wheeler himself. Tom looked nothing like the confident quarterback Jake remembered. His face was gaunt, his eyes haunted. He'd aged 20 years in 3. "Jake," Tom whispered urgently, "what are you doing here?" Jake studied his old classmate, trying to read the situation. Tom was alone, unarmed, and seemed more frightened than threatening. "I could ask you the same thing," Jake replied carefully. Tom's eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying to figure out how to stop this nightmare. Victoria, she's not who I thought she was. When Sarah found out what was happening, Victoria said she had to be eliminated. I thought she meant discredited. I never thought—" "Oh, you never thought she'd try to kill her," Jake finished. Tom nodded miserably. "By the time I realized what Victoria was really planning, it was too late. Sarah had already disappeared. I've been looking for her ever since." Jake made a calculated risk. "She's alive, Tom." Tom's legs nearly gave out with relief. "Thank God. Is she safe?" "For now. But not if Victoria moves this operation like she's planning." Tom looked back at the storage facility with disgust. "I never wanted any of this. Victoria convinced me it was just money laundering. I was stupid, greedy, and I thought I could handle it. But then the women started arriving. Why didn't you go to the police?" "With what?" "Victoria made sure I was implicated in everything. She has enough evidence to destroy me completely." Tom's voice broke. "And she made it clear what would happen to Sarah if I tried to cross her." Jake felt grudging sympathy for his former rival. Tom had been weak and stupid, but he wasn't evil. He was trapped in a web of his own making. "There might be a way out," Jake said. "But it would require you to be brave, probably for the first time in your life." Tom looked at him with desperate hope. "Tell me what to do. We need someone on the inside when the FBI arrives. Are you willing to risk everything to save those women and stop Victoria?" Tom didn't hesitate. "Yes, I should have stopped this months ago." Jake quickly outlined a plan. Tom would continue his normal routine, but would gather additional intelligence and help coordinate the rescue when Jake's FBI contact arrived. "There's something else," Tom said. "Victoria's been asking questions about your grandfather's property. She thinks Sarah might be hiding there." Jake felt ice form in his veins. "What kind of questions?" "She's been studying old survey maps, looking for caves, abandoned buildings, and she's hired specialists from out of state." The implication was clear. Victoria was preparing for a manhunt. Jake made his way back through the forest, his mind churning with urgency. When he reached the rendezvous point, Sarah was pacing anxiously. "They know someone was there," she said immediately. "The guards are doing a full perimeter sweep." "We need to move," Jake replied. "Victoria's planning to relocate the entire operation, and she's bringing in professionals to hunt for you." As they rode toward their next safe house, Jake filled Sarah in on his conversation with Tom. Sarah's reaction was complex, anger at Tom's weakness, but also sad understanding. They reached an old hunting cabin deep in the Beartooth Mountains. As they settled in, Jake placed a satellite phone call to his former commanding officer. Colonel Maria Martinez answered on the second ring. "Thompson," she said, "this better be good." Jake quickly outlined the situation, sending encrypted photos and documents. Colonel Martinez was silent for a long moment. "Jake, what you're describing is one of the largest human trafficking operations we've encountered in the continental U.S. "I saw them, Colonel," Jake said firmly. "Dozens of women and girls. I believe you. But mounting an operation of this magnitude will take time. I need to coordinate with local FBI field officers, arrange for specialized units." "How much time?" 48 hours, minimum. Maybe 72. Jake looked at Sarah, seeing his own fears reflected in her eyes. "Colonel, they're planning to move the operation within the week, and they're actively hunting for my witness." "Then you need to keep her alive and hidden until we can get there," Colonel Martinez said grimly. Can you do that? Jake met Sarah's gaze. Yes, ma'am. We'll be ready. As Jake ended the call, Sarah moved closer to him. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't facing her nightmare alone. Whatever happens, she said softly, I'm glad you came back. Jake took her hands, feeling the calluses earned through months of survival. I should never have left in the first place. Outside the cabin, storm clouds were gathering over the Montana peaks. In less than 72 hours, their long nightmare would either end in justice and freedom or in tragedy. The final battle was about to begin. Judgment Day. The storm broke on the morning of the 3rd day, bringing sheets of rain and winds that bent the pine trees. At the federal command post established at the abandoned Grayson airstrip, Colonel Martinez coordinated Operation Broken Chains. Tactical teams Alpha and Bravo will approach from the north and east, she briefed the assembled agents. Charlie team will position along the access road to prevent escape. Our priority is the safety of the victims. We estimate 30 to 40 women and girls are being held. Jake stood at the edge of the briefing, dressed in tactical gear. Sarah was safely hidden at a secure location under FBI protection, but Jake had insisted on participating in the rescue. Thompson, Colonel Martinez called him over. Your inside source. Is he reliable? Jake nodded toward Tom Wheeler, who sat pale and nervous in the corner. He's scared, but he wants to make this right. He's confirmed that Victoria is planning to move the women tonight. Colonel Martinez studied the weather radar. This storm could work in our favor. Reduced visibility, muffled sound, but it also increases risk if things go bad. Tom Wheeler approached them, hands shaking. Victoria's suspicious, he said quietly. She's moved up the timeline. The transport trucks are arriving at midnight instead of tomorrow. Colonel Martinez checked her watch. It was already 10 p.m. We move now, she decided. All teams, final equipment check. We launch in 15 minutes. The approach to the Wheeler Ranch was treacherous in the storm. Jake moved with Alpha Team through the forest, using night vision to navigate the rain-soaked terrain. The weather had driven most perimeter guards inside, making their approach easier. Through his radio headset, Jake heard Colonel Martinez. All teams in position. Charlie team reports multiple vehicles approaching, large trucks, possibly the transport Victoria mentioned. Jake's heart raced. If the trucks were arriving early, the window for rescue was closing rapidly. Alpha team, move to secondary positions, Colonel Martinez ordered. We can't let those trucks leave with the victims. Jake crept closer to the storage facility, where he could see increased activity. Guards were herding frightened women from the building toward waiting trucks. Victoria Wheeler stood near the loading area, directing operations with cold precision. Through his scope, Jake could see the victims' faces, young women, some barely teenagers, clutching meager possessions as they were forced toward an uncertain fate. Bravo, team in position, came the radio call. We have visual on approximately 35 victims, 12 armed hostiles, and the primary target. Colonel Martinez's voice crackled through the storm. All teams, execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, execute! The night exploded into chaos as FBI tactical teams emerged from the darkness, floodlights illuminating the compound as agents shouted commands. FBI, nobody move! Get on the ground! Victoria's operation collapsed into pandemonium. Guards scrambled for weapons, while victims screamed and scattered, confused by the sudden appearance of their rescuers. Jake moved toward the storage facility, where several women had taken cover. His job was to secure and calm the victims. Ladies, we're FBI, Jake called out in Spanish and English. You're safe now. We're here to help you. A young girl, no more than 16, looked at him with eyes that had seen too much horror. Es verdad? She whispered. Is it true? Yes, Jake replied, gently helping her to her feet. It's over. You're going home. Across the compound, Victoria Wheeler had barricaded herself in the ranch house with several guards, turning the rescue into a siege situation. Primary target has hostiles in the main house, came the radio call. Tom Wheeler is inside and may be in danger. Making a decision that went against orders but followed his conscience, Jake slipped away from his team and circled toward the back of the ranch house. The back door was unlocked. Tom's work. He found Victoria in the study, holding a gun pointed at Tom, who stood defiant despite his obvious fear. Between them, documents were burning in the fireplace. "You're going to help me get out of here," Victoria was saying, "or I'll kill you and claim self-defense." "No," Tom said simply. "I won't help you hurt anyone else." Victoria's finger tightened on the trigger, and Jake burst through the doorway. "FBI, drop your weapon!" Victoria spun toward Jake, her face twisted with rage. For a moment, time suspended. Then she swung her gun toward Jake instead of surrendering. Jake's training took over, one clean shot, and Victoria Wheeler collapsed. Tom stared in shock, then slowly sank into a chair. "It's over," Jake said, speaking into his radio. "Primary target down. Tom Wheeler is secure." Within minutes, FBI agents flooded the house. Outside, victims were loaded into ambulances and given medical attention. The storage facility that had been a prison was now a crime scene. Colonel Martinez found Jake as paramedics checked Tom for injuries. "Good work, Thompson. Unconventional, but effective." "The women?" Jake asked. "All safe. We're coordinating with international agencies to reunite them with their families. Some have been missing for over 2 years. Colonel Martinez paused. "You saved a lot of lives tonight." As dawn broke over Montana, Jake finally allowed himself to feel relief. Sarah was safe, the trafficking network was destroyed, and justice had been served. He found Sarah waiting at the command post, tears streaming down her face as she watched news reports. When she saw Jake, she ran to him, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't have to look over her shoulder. "Is it really over?" she asked. "It's over," Jake confirmed. "You're free, Sarah. You can come home." 6 months later, Jake and Sarah stood together at the edge of his grandfather's ranch, now restored and thriving. The Wheeler property had been seized and converted into a victim services center. "Do you ever regret coming back?" Sarah asked, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant colors. Jake took her hand, feeling the simple gold wedding band they'd exchanged the week before. "Never. Sometimes the best thing you can do is come home and fight for what matters." In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully in fields that had once hidden unspeakable horrors. But now, those fields represented hope, redemption, and the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things when they choose courage over comfort. The mysterious cowboy had indeed ridden into Sarah's life at exactly the right moment, not to rescue her, but to stand beside her as she rescued herself and countless others. What an incredible journey. We hope Sarah and Jake's story of courage, redemption, and justice touched your heart as much as it touched ours. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our global community. Your support helps us bring you more stories that inspire and uplift. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest adventures begin when we choose to come home and fight for what we believe in. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey.